nailed it.
It is the reason why I can go to bed a little bit later. I still go to bed late, but I can get up at 5, get a little cardio in, make my breakfast, and have me a nice little enjoyable morning. Without that stuff, no way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the best part, no melatonin, no sedatives, non-habit forming, won't mess with your hormones or metabolism. Just good stuff to help you get nice quality, deep sleep. Help you fall asleep, and it's almost like I think they have it on their website. They call it pre-workout for your sleep.
It is.
And it's got amino acids and as well as collagen, a lot of helpful things to help you recover while you sleep as well.
I've tried a lot of stuff to try to help me get better sleep. This is the only thing that has worked consistently. Absolutely love it. Like I am buying that from here until my dying days, because it has helped me get the most out of my sleep. It helps me stay asleep. I'm not waking up as much. Like, it's just an absolute game changer. So check them out, thirdzy.com. That's THIRDZY.com, and you can use our code TEF, and you can save 20%, and you will sleep better. Okay, let's bring in our good friend from all the way from Sydney, Australia. He is the mayor of Australian CrossFit. He's Jeremy Austin. How you doing, man?
Very well. How you going, boys?
Doing great, man. We're excited because the next couple of weeks we have some competition to talk about. And the Down Under Championship is really, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, but from our perspective has really established itself as, I don't want to say like a top tier off-season competition, but it is maybe that next tier down. What's allowed it to create such a foothold, not only there in Australia, but also on the worldwide CrossFit landscape?
Well, I think you go back to the early days of the regional and where we are now in Wollongong, and it's absolutely bucketing down here. It has been for days, and it's going to continue on for a little bit. So the weather's miserable, but there's sort of that feeling of the original sort of standpoint of where CrossFit got its foothold in Australia and New Zealand out here. So people are really happy to come down here, and like the arena's awesome. It's like one of the best arenas that you'll see, very similar to the StubHub Centre in Carson, just with a roof on, thank goodness. But I think people enjoy coming back down here. It's a good community feel. Athletes, like a lot of international athletes, are coming down here. It's a good opportunity to come down, and I know the people that are coming down are going to be experiencing a few little bits and pieces of what the entire scenery down here has got to give them. So you'll see some footage coming up in the coming days, and they're going to be doing some activities around the place. So just getting out and about and just sort of embracing the community down here. And I think it's sort of coming back after its only first year last year on the bounce back. I think things are good. And I was speaking to Andreas Law, who's the director of Down Under, yesterday, and I said, this has got more high-profile athletes than the Torian Pro, because we've got all that international flavour coming in rather than just a local athlete. So why wouldn't you be coming down here?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like it's an important asset. I mean, Australia has been a big piece of the community for a long time, but the biggest obstacle has always been geography, right? In both directions, right? Getting the Australian athletes and New Zealand athletes out into competitions that the rest of the world, right? So the rest of the community can see them, and vice versa, getting athletes to go back down there. And it seems like competitions like that can start to bridge that gap a little bit.
Oh, a little bit. And I was talking to Annie all the way down from the airport last night, and she's normally the big sort of West Coast flyer straight through to Sydney. But she dropped into Oahu on the way through. So she did a 5-hour and then had a 5-hour layover and then did the 11. And she said it was so much better than going straight through.
Really?
Noah was very happy because he slept the whole way down here yesterday when he got in. So he was pretty happy when he arrived yesterday. So it's not really that bad.
Well, let's talk about the fields that we have competing. And I guess we'll save the women for a second, because I think they might have some more familiar names to people. But who are the top names that you will be paying attention to and that people should be paying attention to as they watch this competition? And by the way, you will be able to watch this competition live. There is a stream being offered, and Jeremy will be on that along with Andy Sakamoto, so that's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be tuning in. But from the men's perspective, just names to watch and most intriguing storylines for you.
Well, that's the thing. There's not a lot of male competitors in the field that people would know because they've all gone into the team competitions. So the elite men's division is going to be way open. Jake Douglas obviously going to the games this year for his first time. He's going to be probably the benchmark guy that we're going to look out for. Zach Thomas, who got the event record for event number 1 at semi-finals from the Torian Pro, he's going to be competing as an individual. Also got Pete Ellis, a youngster who got on the podium last year. He's back again. And a young kid I'm really excited about who won the New Zealand national competition last week down in Hamilton, which is a couple of hours south of Auckland, Dante Karangaroa. So he's a guy, and if you put a barbell in his hand, he's going to be cycling it very well. So excited to see what he can do now that he's sort of jumped into that sort of top spot in New Zealand, see what he can do when he comes over here and see if he can back it up.
Do you feel like this is a good platform for some of these men who have maybe been on that just outside of the scope to actually put together a competition that can give some credence to them making a run at an individual next season on the game side?
Oh, for sure. And I think Pete Ellis did that last year very well, and so we sort of had an idea of what he could do at Torian, and then he came down here and had a really good weekend. I think there's probably another young guy, Zane Shellabear-Healy, who's Grace Walton's partner from Western Australia in Perth. I think he's probably going to be one of those athletes as well who's had the experience of down under last year, goes to Torian again, does okay, does top 10. So I think this might be the platform that could probably springboard him as well into a really good 2024 season.
We talk about sort of the next generation of athletes who are coming up all around the world, whether it's Europe or here in North America. But when I think about sort of the pioneers of Australian CrossFit, at least on the men's side, there's Chad McKay, there's Rob Forte, there's Brandon Swan, like those guys. Who are the next group that is poised to maybe take the mantle from that crew?
Well, you've got your Ricky Garrard, who's in team competition this weekend, and his team's changed about 6 times from the team that was named. But he's going to be sitting around for a while. Jake Crouch is obviously the Prince of Pacific, so he's probably going to be the guy that's going to be around for probably the next 4 to 5 years. And depending on what Jake Douglas can do this weekend, and can he bounce back this year at the Torian Pro and get back to the games, I think sort of those 3 guys in particular are going to be 3 guys that are probably going to take that mantle from the old boys. Yeah. It was funny, you mentioned Chad McKay. I got a memory pop up yesterday of memories in Wollongong, and I've got a photo with Chad when he joined us on the broadcast. I think it might have been 2015 or 16, but it was early days, but he's not got any smaller.
He's still the big rig. Yeah. Oh man, I love it. And it is interesting because the men that you mentioned, some people to keep your eye on, pretty much all 23 or younger. So still very much in their early 20s. And then you sprinkle in, like you said, I mean, Jay Crouch feels like he's been around forever, but he's only 24. Bailey Martin's 23. And so it does seem like there is a pretty solid foundation of young athletes that are ready to make that next step, or at least come kind of, throw their weight around a little bit. Because Will Kearney was 23, I think, last year. Peter Ellis, 21. You mentioned Zach Thomas is 21. So and Zane, probably 24 this year coming to the games. Like, there are a lot of young athletes that are kind of chomping at the bit.
Well, I think it's going to be great for competition, having all those guys. It's a shame we're not going to see Bailey Martin bounce back from his games appearance and then the result he had in Rogue to come into individual. But no doubt in that team competition, he'll be chomping at the bit to try and nail the 3 American boys down and try and with him and having sort of Royce at the head of that team, I think. And obviously you mentioned like Jay. Honestly, it feels like Jay's been around for the last 10 years. Because his name's just been on the tip of everyone's tongue the whole time. So, like, that team's going to be great. And, like, having Royce to steer those 2 boys around with his experience, I think it's going to be, like, a really good weekend for those young boys.
Let's jump over to the women's side, because when you start to look at who's there, this is where I think you see some familiar names and some athletes that people have seen at the games, seen at regional / semifinals level. But who are the main contenders now for the women?
Well, it's not so much who's in the competition, it's who's out of the competition. Mm-hmm. So Sarah Sigmundsson obviously pulling out yesterday. Caitlin Van Ziel has now withdrawn as well. Oh, wow. So a number of withdrawals coming out. Taylor Williamson stuck her hand up yesterday and said, "All right, I'm having a crack at individual now," which is probably the one I'm really excited to see. A lot of people down here in the Oceania region haven't seen what she can do as an individual. So I think it's going to be a good competition for her to come in. And there's a potential that she could actually win this thing, which I'm excited about. Who else are in there? Obviously, you've got Emily DeRoy, who went to the Games this year. Christina Lividatakis, the South African, who podiumed last year. She's back for another crack. Gemma Hope, who podiumed last year as well. She's not back. So it's going to sort of swing things open a little bit. The champ from last year, Maddie Sturt, she's back in again. She was so close to going to the Games this year at the Torian Pro. So she's still around and still training very hard. So there's that sort of sprinkle of experience more so. But the one I'm really, really focused on this weekend is to see what Grace Walton can do, the West Australian. She's got a very big future. She's shown us in the last 2 years at the Torian Pro what she's capable of. And I think this weekend might be that one, this sort of next step for her to go, hey, here I am. So I'm excited to see what she can do.
Yeah, you mentioned obviously Gemma and Caitlin not competing, but I think the beauty of that is if you're looking at the games leaderboard from Torian last year, behind Caitlin, the next 4 athletes that were knocking on the door as the kind of the not quite heir apparent, but the athletes that could make that next step sitting on the bubble, Grace Walton, Georgia Pryor, Julia Hannaford, and Maddie Sturt, all going to be there. So you kind of get this really cool litmus test of seeing what all of these athletes have been doing in the offseason as they fight to get back off of the bubble into that top spot. And that's why I think when Sean and I were talking about this is what interests me in terms of, hey, we have some athletes that are really, really close, right? And is this going to be the year? And if so, what are going to be the early warning signs of whether they do or do not, especially when they get to compete, in their backyard a little bit?
Oh, for sure. And you've got your Georgia Pryors who have been sitting there for the last couple of years on that sort of verge. And don't discount Marnie Sykes either.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of just been chipping away, just training away. And Sean, you mentioned year between CrossFit competitions. It's seems to ever since we've been talking about this sort of stuff, and now it's sort of back. So, yeah, Tommy, I fully agree. It's going to be interesting to see what these athletes have been doing in the off-season, what sort of trajectory they're going to be on. Obviously, you're not going to be peaking for down under, but you still want to be in a competitive position because it's sort of that could springboard. And I know the Open's not too far away either, and my fitness level is going to attest to that. But it's not that far away, so it's around the corner.
Yeah, and Marnie's a good call, right? Because she's been on a team the last few years, trying to make a push for that Oceania team. Making the podium the last couple of years, but she was hitting the sanctional circuit back 2020. I watched her compete in I believe it was in Pandaland and then Dubai, and making those kind of rounds, if you will, and sometimes you see the athlete test the individual water, take a step back, go spend some time in team, develop a little bit, and come back even better. And she's a good candidate for that.
Oh, for sure. You don't see too much of that anymore, of athletes jutting around doing competition after competition, unless your name's Royce Dunn. He's competing a lot. I know Luka Djukic is doing the same thing. He's just competing at everything that pops up.
Yeah.
And you need the experience of competing, and you need the experience of winning to be a champion. So getting out to these competitions is really important. Some athletes choosing not to compete this weekend, I'm not sure how that's going to roll, if they need, obviously, time to recover from injury or what it might be, but you just can't beat that game time experience.
And we haven't even talked about a couple of the transports. Amy Kringle, who was, I think, 20th last year in Europe. Is Annika still competing, right?
Yes, Annika's still competing.
Yeah, and I think she's someone that everyone's kind of waiting to see how does she show up after. It just seems like every year it's just one little thing here or there that keeps her